Hello and welcome to R&R's Ask the Expert. I'm Kayla McGowan, Editor-in-Chief, and today we're diving into the world of contents restoration and cleaning. I have three special guests, starting with David Gavilanes, Annissa and Stefan Figley. All of these individuals have years of experience in contents restoration, and they're going to dive into key 5 questions that we have surrounding contents restoration and cleaning. Please welcome David, Annissa, and Stefan. Thank you guys for joining us today on this all crazy content dive in deep here. So first and foremost, I just wanted to let you guys give a little bit about yourselves. Annissa, if you want to start first, like your 30-second elevator pitch, and then we'll go on to David and Stefan.
Well, hi, everybody. I'm Annissa with Firehouse Education, and we are a high-end boutique training school for restoration companies. We focus primarily on fire. That's our name, Firehouse. And I've been in the industry. This is actually my 25th year, and very, very passionate about this topic that we're talking about because I feel like this is really a massive area that needs to be served in our communities as well as our industry. And I'm very excited to be here with all you guys today.
Awesome. Thank you, David.
David Gavilanes, Regional Business Coach and Lead Trainer for Blue Kangaroo Packouts. I started in contents restoration in 2011. And the thing about my story that I'd like to tell is I started out as a contents tech. First in the job, showed up somewhere, had no idea what I was doing. So however many years later, here I am.
All right, Stefan.
Hi, I'm Stefan Figley. I'm the president of 1-800-Packouts. I've been in the restoration industry for a little over a decade. We have utilized Annissa and crew for some training elements as well. So we are well connected in that area in general. And we focus solely on the hard content section of the industry.
Awesome. Thank you all. So let's dive right in. And feel free to, whoever wants to answer this first, go for it. So what are the most common types of damages that you encounter in contents cleaning and restoration, and how do you address them? I know that's a very bold question and vague question, but I think we're all in different regions of the country, so that might give a little bit of insight.
Sure, I'll start. I mean, fires are literally the largest from a cleaning perspective. They have so many, just with a fire, you have so many elements that end up needing a cleaning and odor removal. It just has more tentacles, if you would, to some others that can be a little more controlled around water, et cetera. They're more confined sometimes. And so the breadth of the damage and necessity for us has usually been fire. That would be the largest.
Yeah, I found that to be the case also where things are very regional. I know I had a training business at one point, and I had some of my clients in like the Southwest, more to South, they had a lot more water damage just because of how things were up north. You know, Illinois, Michigan, Great Lakes, you see a lot more fire losses. People run their furnaces in the winter. That's going to create, incidents of puffbacks and whatnot. I've always credited water damage in the Southeast where I used to live to just construction standards. You know, you could have a new development with 1,000 new homes, and within a week of those things going up, you're going to have a water damage situation somewhere. So that's, what you would see there. Now with, yeah, I believe the question was, common types of damage you encounter, layers of soot with fire damage. There's just, depending on how close the contents are to the source of the fire, the layering of soot will be either, heavy or not as thick. And the further away you are from the event zone, the likelihood that you can retrieve those items successfully increases. And that's just a matter of, getting the right type of emulsifier in the cleaning process and just getting that soot off. Deodorizing, of course, is a big part of it. But yeah, getting rid of that soot, it's that simple.
I feel like the reason, it's funny, yeah, because like what, 90, probably 90% maybe I would say on contents is fire. And the reason is because if you think about it, right, like that's where we have restorability. Because if it gets wet or it's a sewage, situation or, a hurricane, oftentimes like we don't even like the contents aren't even there anymore. They're literally blown away. So we have fire is where the contents really get involved. And I think great stuff, David, that you were talking about. I think that the biggest challenge, which I think, Kayla, honey, was part of your question, but I think the biggest challenge that I find, and the most difficult thing is dealing with the odor. You can kind of clean like just about anything, really, you guys. We've got incredible solutions out there and equipment like ultrasonic machines and stuff to get things clean. I don't find to be the bigger challenge. The biggest challenge is odor, and the biggest challenge of that is the perceived odor. So I think that when you ask us at least for me, what's the most difficult, challenging thing in a restoration of contents, it is helping the clients in dealing with the emotional side of it. Because you can have something be perfectly clean, decontaminated, everything's great, looks brand new, and they're like, I can't lay on that mattress, I can't sit on that couch. So I think that's a big challenge that people, especially anybody considering getting into contents, needs to really understand and have a good grasp of.
I'll say one more thing. The other challenge to odor is sometimes, and I've had this happen to me where it's like, all right, yeah, this still smells bad. So let me just clean it some more. And then I start taking the finish off of something, right? So
Oh
there's a
yeah,
difference between like,
yeah.
like cleaning something visually and
Mhm.
actually getting the odor off, which then like Annissa said, there's tools to work on that, right? So whether it's like ozone hydroxyl or even like a separate like deodorization tank with a separate, dip with whatever, formula you want to use. There's ways to combat it, but I think a lot of people learn the hard way, which is, yeah, I've cleaned something too much, which happens.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, I would I would definitely say you guys kind of touched on the next question I had in mind about like the challenging portion of this, right? I think emotional is really high on the list, right? Because we deal with a level of emotion with our customers and it can affect us, right? And not only that, David, I think you said this really well too, like, yeah, okay, it still smells, but let me just clean it again. Well, that can lead to a different type of disaster, right? So, what are, Annissa, I'll start with you. What's a particularly challenging project that you've worked on, and how did you overcome it?
This was a really an easy one for me. The most challenging job that I've ever worked on was a porter job. And we actually came with our mobile cleaning unit. We were called by the insurance company from Washington State, and we drove nonstop, crew of 12 people in our minivan and our F-350 crew cab truck pulling our mobile unit, right? Because it was a huge hoarder job, huge situation, big, huge fire. And they just knew like it was and I'm talking, this was in 2011. It was probably, I don't know, I guess a $75,000 pack out alone had they packed it out. So they wanted the mobile unit. So paid us a bunch of money, drove us down there, and I went in and I show up, you guys, and it was like, I don't even know how many thousand miles that we drove. I'm talking Salt Lake City, Utah. I'm sorry, Ogden, Utah from Spokane, Washington. And we show up and I get out of the unit and, I'm in my red scrubs and my badge and all my clipboard and I'm coming out there with them. And they're like, listen, come walking right out. The husband did. Listen, I know you just came a long way and we said it was going to be okay, but we can't do this. Like my wife emotionally cannot handle this. They lost about 60% of their home, by the way, you guys. It was very traumatic on top of the obvious emotional trauma stuff that went on. And so they were like, listen, just like, we're very sorry, but basically turn around and go drive 1,500 miles back where you came from. And of course, I'm standing on this front lawn going, okay, what do I do here? And it was like this, and this man was they're very country folks, very, down to earth, easy going. And I just said, hi, my name's Annissa. And I just want to say straight up, I'm so sorry. I am so sorry for what you're going through. I said, I've driven all this way. Would you maybe mind at least showing me, what, and maybe telling me the story of what happened? You guys, it was probably like, I don't know, a good 30 minutes. And everybody's sitting out in the truck in the van and nobody's getting out. I'm like, everybody just stay. It took about 30 minutes. And finally, when I wound up in their living room or their master bedroom near the trunk that had their son's things in it that they had lost 30 years prior to this fire at 3 months old of SIDS, and she broke down over this trunk, and I just stayed in the room with her for a while, and it was probably 20 minutes into that, and she turned around and said, honey, give her the keys. And I want her to help us through this. And it wound up being the most difficult emotional job that I've ever done. It took us 11 days, 7,000 square foot house, log non-salvage, everything completely all done, and had to put what was still left in a shipping container. But it was absolutely the emotional side of the claim that is the part that we don't realize is the toughest, right? And there was a lot of trauma in the family, and that's where this all came out. And I actually 3 years later, we wound up back in Utah doing another job, and they found out we were going to be there, and called me up and said, "Hey, we want you and Travis to come and have dinner with us." And we came. They rebuilt their house, and we came back 3 years later and had the most beautiful dinner with them. And the house was immaculate and beautiful. So this incident actually was what she needed, and she processed through that trauma. So that was my honestly, it was my most difficult and my most rewarding job I've ever had in my entire career.
That sounds beautiful, but also hard at the same time, right? It
Yeah, it
became
was.
a
Yeah.
longer term relationship, right?
Yeah.
And
Mhm.
we do help people in their most dire times or their most traumatic times. And I
Yeah.
think, we have to have sympathy and empathy in order to do our jobs well as well. So, David, what about for you?
Well, I want to speak to the point that Annissa just made, which is, for anyone that's listening, when you go look at a job for the first time, one of the most important things that you need to do is, emphasize that, you're going to make an evaluation first. I think the mistake some people make is they go in there guns blazing. Yeah, we're going to do like X, Y, Z, and you're going to stand over there and, watch me rock this. There's things that have to be looked at. What's gonna be salvaged, what isn't. What are you looking to keep? Like what's going on here? So that initial part where could I go in blind and just pack out a house? Yeah, sure I can, but I want to have that conversation first. Now my example is completely different from Manissa's because it was a commercial loss. This was a few years ago. We were called in to pack out. So this was in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. It's the University of Chapel Hill. University of North Carolina is in Chapel Hill. They have a museum, their own university museum, but their museum store was kind of like away from the actual structure. The museum store was on the bottom level of the street corner on Franklin Street. Above that was a restaurant called Top of the Hill. The restaurant had a water loss, and it, came down onto the museum store. And there wasn't anything particularly challenging about it, but what I do remember is that when it was all said and done, every piece of retail item that they had, we had packed out and returned. So, it's one of those things where it's challenging to kind of think about. I didn't really think about it too much at the time, but when it was all said and done, looking back, it's like, all right, that was hard to do because, it's like you want to pack out something that, that needs to go back on the shelves and gets, sold again. So, yeah, that was a good one.
And you said every single piece. That is very significant there, David. Don't downplay that by any means.
Yeah, it means we didn't lose anything. Go figure.
Right. Exactly. What about for you, Stefan?
Yeah, I think Nisa took the hoarder jobs seem to they're the unknown, and you also have to deal with the you think it's not a disaster, but something happens to I would have said a hoarder job would be the one that I have is the most challenging, But I'll give a different flavor to it, something that's a little more recent, the LA fires. And you can hear what David says and what Annissa says, the amount of empathy that our industry has to take on is significant. And we're a franchise system, so we have multiple owners in the LA area. I mean, the fires are national news, but the hard part is there's some that's total loss. They're just gone. And then there's some that is a partial loss, and the insurance carriers are coming in and they're offering cash and saying, hey, just write it off, take the cash. And that's starting to happen a little bit. But what we had with several of our owners, and I was out there, we had visit with some families that didn't have the full structure wasn't destroyed. It was probably 60%, similar to what Annissa said in her example too, which is repairable at some point. But they are trying to identify, you just take a look around. It's not like you look next door and everything's fine. It's just the sheer damage that was around had everybody in shock. And they're trying to identify their personal belongings, which is the closest thing they have to it. And they're trying to do this with one of our owners, and our owner has just lost his house and he's out servicing. He lost everything. And there were times that the homeowner had broken down and you don't understand and everything. And it took everything. And finally, our owner said, ma'am, I do understand. My house is completely gone. So we do understand. And it is our job to try and help you and bring you back to where it was. And then it's working with them to identify, once it's safe, to identify their belongings that can be done, and knowing what can be actually done and salvaged. An insurance adjuster sometimes will just say, no, it's a total loss, but it may have extreme meaning to that homeowner. And knowing, so like David said, how close it was to a fire, how far it was, there's different elements of what you can use and how much you can try to salvage an item. And it may have more deeper meaning. And that's been one of the harder things that I've seen lately. We have many owners. We've had some mobilize and be out in California right now, trying to service folks. And it's finding that right balance of empathy. And once they've done a couple, they kind of have this wall of non-empathy again, because they've seen it. And we have to remind them. We actually had a call on Friday with 8 owners and just discussed the fact of, remember, this is the first time these folks will have seen you and been through this conversation. I know you guys have been through 8 or 10 conversations over the last several weeks. This is their first, and you have to bring them back in to talk about it in the first time. And it's like David said, it's not always the difficulty of cleaning it or packing it out or getting it taken care of. Like he said, stand over there, we can rock this, we can get this thing done. Yeah. But you're also balancing that and getting it done, whether it's a commercial space, whether it's a personal property. And that's the balance of what we do in the content world, I think, that makes it the most challenging.
Yeah, you provided some great emphasis there, right? What we do, yeah, we handle things several times, but when we're going into areas like LA, for example, this is the first time they've ever really been faced with this. Yeah, they've had fires, right? I'm a California native. I've seen my fair share of fires. Thankfully, I never was directly affected, but seeing how just whole towns were leveled, how do you even address that, right? I think it's more of like, sometimes you do have to add that personal aspect, like for your owner, like, hey, I actually do know what you're going through. I live here too, and I don't have a home anymore. It's just those simple things of kind of humanizing what we do that makes a huge difference for our customers at the end of the day. And speaking of all of this, I know we have some great technologies and techniques that kind of help us and help our consumers through tough times. You know, what is being used now and what is being used now and I can't talk. What is being used now and how has it changed the industry? I know, Stefan, we've had the opportunity to talk about this previously, but you know, David and Annissa, you know, what are your thoughts on that as well?
You know, we've got some pretty incredible technology out there in this world. Absolutely. And, you know, for years and years, the only thing we had in contents was really ultrasonic. Like when I started out in 2000, you guys, I mean, there was no programs. There was no Matterport. There was no Encircle. There was no iCat, none of that. The only thing we had was Xactimate. I know I'm totally aging myself, right? Um, but I'll never forget my first content job. I mean, way back then, the actual first in 2000, it was a $26,000 job, which if you guys do that math, that's a lot. It was a huge job. And the only thing that we had was Xactimate. In fact, I mean, I set up a card table and a laptop and a legal pad. That was the inventory. I did my own version of Matterport with a Canon PowerShot. You guys remember those little $80, cameras? And it's been amazing what we have now. I mean, now we've got, oh my gosh, we've got, like the hydroxyl technology is incredible. And we've got Encircle, which is amazing, and Matterport, and just all of these things, which is phenomenal. And it is enhances us. I always caution and want to say this when I'm talking to people and they're asking about all the technology stuff, especially those that are in their 30s and just getting into it, and they're just really all so excited about all the stuff. And yes, that's cool and that's great, and we've absolutely got it so much nicer. I mean, I can't believe doing a hoarding pack out, and I just did one in Minnesota a couple of years ago, and I couldn't believe, I mean, it was an $85,000 pack out, and I could not believe how easy it was with Encircle, right? Like, I was so grateful that I had that iPad on my side, which, by the way, we didn't even have iPads back then. Remember, in fact, the phones that were flip phones still, you guys, we didn't have the smartphones that I know, I'm totally aging myself. So we have some great technology in this industry, and it's wonderful. And I would encourage anybody getting into content restoration to be sure that they're, very well educated on what we do have out there. But I really want to throw a caution out there also. Please do not think that the technology is going to replace skill or that it's going to replace education, because it doesn't. Because at the end of the day, those items enhance you as a restorer. They enhance you as the person out there helping, as Stefan was just talking about. This is, we're in a human to human business in especially contents restoration, but really restoration altogether. And so you can have all the certifications and all the iPad and the Encircle and the hydroxyl or ozone and all these great things pulling up to somebody's driveway. But when they're standing there and they're just trying to remember where their grandmother's picture was in the dining room so they can hopefully try to see in the ashes if it's still there, none of that matters to them. It'll matter, I know, to help us as restorers, and it enhances the kind of restorers that we are and helps us do a much better job, easier for our clients. But don't ever rely so much on the technology that you let it replace the human to human factor in what you do. And it's not a replacement for education and training. It is an enhancement, a tool, just like a carpenter uses a hammer to build a house. Well, now I'm really aging myself because now they use air nailers, but you know what I mean, right? Like, it's a tool. So I'm grateful, trust me, you guys, for the technology we have, for sure.
Yeah, what about for you, David?
Yeah, no, we've come a long way. So my first, I remember my first day on a pack out, and I remember because it seemed ridiculous to me because it was just a job that I had, like, taken. And the way it was our first job was in an apartment somewhere in Durham, and there was like one woman with like a sheet of paper and a pen and like a clipboard, and then she had her assistant like telling her what could fit in a box, and then me and like four other people stood outside the room and waited. And then when she was done, we rushed in there and we boxed everything up. And so that's how it used to be. Then it evolved from there. But like some of the things a few things we use now, right? One of the big things we use is Matterport. So if I could have, like, let's say, a franchisee that's never, written an estimate for commercial loss. I had someone Matterport me like a nursing facility, like, 30,000 square feet of it, shoots it over. And I'm like, all right, I can help you on this, but give me a couple days. So over the course of a couple days, when I started just building an estimate, and it was pretty spot on to what the scope needed to be. Then there's exact experts, which is this thing inside of Xactimate. We've got our company profile on there, and as you write your estimate, it just starts kind of like giving you kind of like tips. So, and I helped with the rules on it. So, like if you have a box, like it'll say, do you have labor to load it? Whatever. So that's one of the things we have. And I think, Annissa talked about, having a mobile trailer on a previous job. But, I think stuff like that you're going to see more of. We've got one of our franchisees that built out a 53-foot trailer, and I saw it the other day, and it looks amazing. It's got, you know, electrical, plumbing, it's got ultrasonics in it. It's got, all kinds of, it's got like water and inside of a belly underneath it. It's amazing. So, as we move along, we'll see some more improvements. But again, to Anissa's point, at the end of the day, and I think I want like the insurance company to hear this. Like we're still out there grunting through this, loading boxes, without heat in the winter, without air conditioning in the summer. It's still a lot of, hard work for everyone in the field. Technology has made it somewhat easier, but it's still people out there.
Yeah.
And not every job's the same. Some jobs take longer than others just because of the circumstances.
Yeah, that's so true too, David.
Well
Good
said.
emphasis on
Well
that.
said.
Yeah, well said on that. Stefan, anything to add?
No, I think both of them hit everything on the head. I agree with David that the one thing you can't replace in this industry for what we do is the manual labor. Even as much technology, I don't see that getting replaced anytime soon because there's no, you have to be able to move that, and it's in very strenuous conditions sometimes, and it's kind of forgotten as we go through all these new technologies that are in there, and we get pushback as an industry of over, oh well, it shouldn't cost that much, you have so many quicker things to use. We do, but the actual physical element of getting it packed out, getting it cleaned, there's still that manual aspect to it, and that's where you can't change it. And so, like Annissa said, we want the tools. That's just a better deal. It's better for the consumer, the homeowner as well, the policyholder, that they know that we're taking care of it, that we've logged it all, whether it's in Encircle, whether it's on Matterport, they can see it. We've gotten it where people needed their decorations, and yep, we have it. We know what box it's in. We know where it is. We can get it for them so that they have some connection back to their life that they don't want to lose. So that's where technology has helped us even more as we go. Not to even mention the cleaning odor, as David said too. That is significant of where we are, but you still have to manually get that done. There's not going to be conveyor belts, and AI isn't going to be able to change that.
Right.
And, we might get an AI and an estimate someday, yes, but they're not going to be able to physically put that belonging into the box properly. So those are some elements of our business that we are super happy to be more efficient with the technologies, but it doesn't surpass and replace everything that we do, which is the other reason we get to be empathetic with the policyholder, that we can do that. So there is still that connection that goes back, but it has definitely gotten a lot better. And they hit on everything that obviously we all use, but if somebody's not using it, they're a little bit behind the times on that.
Yeah, I would definitely say it's meant to enhance and help us be a little bit more efficient, right? Same thing with AI, right? I know, like you said, yes, it's going to be helpful, but it's never going to replace us as the restorer, the cleaner, the inspector, whatever the case may be. It's just not going to replace us. And speaking of this, I think this is another point in case as to where we will not be replaced is how do we prioritize the items, right? To go through the cleaning and restoration process, and what factors influence those decisions in the process of making, hey, this is more important than this. I know sometimes it's the consumer, right? They point out, hey, this is the must on our list, but what are some ways that you guys are able to go through that? David, if you wanted to take this really quickly.
Yeah, sure. So if there's something that the homeowner points out that this is important, then obviously that's going to be a priority. As far as items that are recoverable, water. things that are in water, you got to get that out quickly, get it dried as quickly as you can, and hope for the best. And then beside that, I think that what maybe some in your audience might understand is that we're working against a price list also, right? So there is the cost factor. It's like, yeah, I can clean something, I can clean some miscellaneous items really well, but if it takes me 2 hours to clean it, it's not actually worth my time to clean it. So we got to factor that against, what we're charging to clean it and make a decision. At that point, that might just be total loss and move on from there.
Perfect. Annissa?
Yeah, I'd like to address that because I actually got when we come in initially and do RSS and we're, in what we call the triage. And when I'm having my homeowner walk me through telling me the story, I'm doing that. I'm assessing without them even realizing that's what I'm doing. And there's really three big things that I use when I'm out there. Number one, first and foremost, is restorability, right? I mean, I've been literally standing right in front of the lady's wedding dress and it's half burnt, right? And a big mess. I mean, I obviously know it's not restorable. I know we're going to have a tough thing to deal with, and that is very emotionally important to her. And she's asking me to save it, but I know I cannot do that. So number one to me is restorability. Number two is sentimental value. And I know that seems weird because you would think, which my number three is monetary value. You would think it would be the other way around. And I know that sometimes, especially if any insurance companies are watching this right now, I know that that's important. And I 1,000% agree with you. Okay. But when there is the hand in clay handprint of a 5-year-old grandchild hanging on the wall, I know, what is that, $6 worth of clay at Hobby Lobby? I get it. Okay. But to that grandma, that might be the one thing she's holding on to. Maybe that grandchild isn't even with her anymore. So there is a sentimental does trump monetary value. Now, that being said, we also have to have reason. I get that. I can't spend, 17 hours on this clay handprint. Sometimes we just have to walk our clients as hard as it is, walk them through that, that this is where that's at. But if it's restorable, and I've done it where I've spent way too much time in an adjuster's eye on an item. Whether I charge for it or not is, kind of depends kind of on the job on that. But I will go very, very far to restore something, especially if someone has lost the majority of their home. If something is that top 5 really important things that they want to walk away with. So that's kind of my criteria. Again, it's restorability at the end of the day. The second is sentimental value. And then third is monetary. And what's funny is, you guys, I've had very few, and even up in recent, I've had very few adjusters ever give me grief over that on an item that I've gone above and beyond for, especially when I explain, what it is. And in my scopes, I always show, look, it took me this many hours on this wooden hand carved eagle because this was why, this was his grandfather's or grandma's china from 1947 or whatever that is. So sometimes I think that if we can tell our story really well in our scope, and our invoice, that we can help out with that. But those are my 3 criteria anyway.
Yeah, those are key. I would definitely say most people are going to appreciate you taking over the sentimental value opposed to monetary, right? Some of that stuff is replaceable, but like you said, a clay handprint. I think I talked to Stefan about this in a previous interview. There was some dishes that a husband was going to throw out, but needless to say, it was actually an heirloom. So I think that there's just some things that we have to take into consideration and tell a story, right? That's our job. We do story tell, and we have to do that efficiently and effectively. So one of the last things I want to close with is, we're talking about restoring and cleaning, but what about helping our homeowners and business owners better protect their belongings from damage, from fires and water losses, even hoarding? I know, like, a lot of us digitize our pictures and things like that, but what are some other key ways to protect that? Stefan, do you want to take that one?
Sorry, I have a naval aircraft above me. No, I mean, we talked about for a homeowner or policyholder is to definitely document. I think is kind of something I think a lot of folks have missed. As Matterport came out years ago, now there's DocuSketch. There's all sorts of tools that are in the industry. But they were actually, insurance carriers were actually, oh, well, why don't we just pay you to go ahead and, if the homeowner will allow us, come shoot their house, and they would have it as they used it as inventory, they used it as documentation. We had done it in a previous company for disasters and exit strategies and so forth in commercial buildings. But it is, documentation is number one. Knowing what you have and where it was originally located in the structure is another thing that I think that folks have. And I think a lot of times they know it's valuable or it's sentimentally valuable. They don't know where it is until it's gone. And then they're like, so almost like, what is your most sentimental value items, like a short list, and kind of where they are located, so that if something in this disaster, which a lot of folks don't prepare to this level, from a fire or a hurricane, a tornado, these are damages that are huge elements. You can't prepare for it. And, if a hurricane is forecasted, do a little bit of preparation. Unfortunately, get there. I mean, people are boarding up their windows, but identify some of the items that you really want to try to protect, put them up a little bit higher, put them in a safer location that if something is moved, water comes in, it's not an immediate situation that it needs to be done, because like David said, once it's in the water, it's questionable whether it's salvageable. How long has it been in there? What do we have to do? Let's get it out, dry it, see if it's salvageable. There's a large process with that folks don't necessarily understand. So I think there's some things like that, just to be aware of where some of the bigger belongings and most crucial belongings that somebody has.
Yeah, those are some great points. What about you, David?
I would say to someone, if you just bought something cool, take a picture of it, because I mean, with the loss, it's so unpredictable of what might happen, and it might not be recoverable, right? So, but at the very least, you want to get compensated for it when you file a claim. So, if whatever, any steps you can take towards getting photographs of your belongings, especially ones that are pricey. Not that long ago, I was on a job site, and the homeowner asked if we could do his total loss inventory for him, and unfortunately, the carrier policies put that burden on him. But I said, well, let me take a look and let me see what you got. And it was his garage had caught fire, and the propane tanks in it had blown up. It was, his whole garage was leveled. I couldn't do a total loss for him if I wanted. But if that person has photos of what was in there, that's going to help that process along the way. So at the very least, keep pictures.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Annissa, what about any other insights from you?
Well, I absolutely cannot even say, look, for any homeowners listening to this, don't be overwhelmed. But when Stefan was talking and David just now about having an inventory, look, even if you just stand in the doorway of every room, in the doorway of your garage, in the doorway of your husband's shop, and take a couple of photographs so that you have a picture to be able to look at. Guys, my husband and I just finished building our brand new house, and it was supposed to take 6 months, and I don't know, 3.5 years later, whatever it was, when we moved out of the cabin into our house. And I was unpacking boxes, you guys, that of course was inventory labeled. However, I forgot I owned half this stuff. I was like, this is like Christmas all over again. I was like, oh my gosh, I forgot about that tiki we got in Maui, set. You know what I mean? Like, you forget those things. And especially when they're keepsakes that, grandma's quilt that you put back. So please take a picture of anything, or all of your rooms. If you have keepsakes, take photographs. If you have something with a serial number on it, like in our area, I live in northeastern Washington, we have tons of hunters. So there is lots of guns and scopes and all kinds of, have your serial numbers of things written down, have photographs of them. You also, for a homeowner who's watching, if I could tell you to do just 2 simple things besides that photographing of your rooms, you should have things in airtight containers if you're going to store them. Please stop storing items in a cardboard box. Not only is that very bad, obviously, if you have water damage, but it's really bad in a fire. So just having things in sealed, snap-on lid Rubbermaid totes. I know that seems weird because I'm talking about fire and this is plastic item, but I'm telling you, I've had Rubbermaid totes that I popped the lid off in a fire, black. You couldn't tell that that tote was white or blue before. It is now coal black, but inside, stuff's untouched. It reeks. We have to deodorize it, which is not that difficult to do, but the stuff is just fine, even though the outside is obviously ruined. So having your items covered so that that soot can't infiltrate is huge. The second biggest thing is if you have a collection of any kind, whether it's Legos or it is a porcelain doll, or you have the teacups like my grandma Koi had years and years ago, have these items covered, okay? Either in a glassed front, not just open shelf curio cabinet or china hutch, but actually with glass doors to stop intrusion and heat infiltration, okay? And then if you have like porcelain dolls, make sure that you have those. They're very inexpensive glass domes that sit over the top of them on a shelf. You guys, I have literally taken glass domes off, just cold black, and the doll under it is just fine in a fire. So there's little things like that that you can do to help protect those things that are often irreplaceable, because there's always that, right? Grandma's quilt, you're not going to be able to pay, say it's valued at $100, like you're not going to care, it's priceless to you. So there's a few things that you can do as a homeowner to help protect yourself. And I feel like it's a massive added value as to any restoration contractors that are watching this. If you're going to do contents restoration for people, you should be educating your homeowners on this. I get it. Now that you're there, they're already going through it. Well, educate them. What things can they do in the future to help them come out? Hopefully they never have to go through it again, but any kind of situation like that. And the other thing that that will do is not only provide value to your client, but it's also going to give them hope and give them something to do while they're going through this trauma, that they can be like, okay, I can take care of myself next time, and I won't have to go through something like this again. So I think that's a huge thing that you should educate yourself as a restorer so that you can then educate your homeowner.
Yeah, well said. I think you guys have provided some great insights and feedback for not only just our, industry professionals, but even consumers. I think we're also consumers at the end of the day too, and some of us may go back and take that mental note and say, do I have my stuff in cardboard? Do I have it in plastic? Little simple things like that. And, like you said, cardboard is a great conductor to fuel the fire, right? And plastic does melt, but I would much rather have something melt than be another reason for the
Great.
fire to, take off. But thank you guys all very much. I really appreciate your time and your valuable insights. And for everybody watching, we will see you on the next Ask the Expert. Take care.